Hey, and welcome to Unfiltered Us, where we invite you to join us to our conversations about life, about love, about parenting, about work, and about everything else that moves us and that we like to talk about. So today we are going to talk about parenting.
Particularly parenting and screen time, I think.
Parenting and screen time and the challenges of parenting in the time of social media and so whatever. So if you haven't subscribed, then please do so.
Helps us a huge amount. My name's Karen.
I'm Rob. And grab a glass of wine or whatever you like to drink and join us in the conversation.
Cheers.
And as always, we're happy about any comments and about your thoughts and how you deal with the challenges of parenting and everything around that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, so the whole conversation, the topic was triggered by the fact that we both have teenage daughters, 5 in total, which are between the ages of 9 and 16. And we both face very similar challenges, which is how to get the pesky kids to do anything when it's so much more interesting to just be on their phone,
Be on social media
all day long,
and
don't care about anything else in the world.
And this feeling that they don't have interests, they don't read, they don't. And I mean, I grew up. When my children were little, we used to read together all the time. And when they were younger, they used to read books. And yet now, I just feel like they never read. They might do some sport, but they don't seem to have hobbies. They don't seem to have, interests or things that really sort of fire them up. And I just really worry about them. I mean, I worry about this entire generation. Like, I just feel like we've conducted this massive social experiment on the youth of today. And we've given them phones where they've got this tool that has them constantly connected to everybody and everything.
It's super addictive.
And then these algorithms that are literally designed to keep you scrolling. And I mean, we as adults with an adult brain and with the logic and reasoning that we've developed over a lifetime, I mean, we struggle to stop scrolling, right? We struggle to manage that distraction and manage that. Yet we've given kids these phones, and then I just think, like a young brain that's just starting to form and just starting to create neural networks and things like that. I think it's virtually impossible for them to control that constant scrolling, and essentially it's an addiction.
And the challenge to me is, and by the way, just to quickly put it into perspective, it's not that. I think in a sense there's other kids that really don't have any social interactions, that don't have any hobbies and whatnot. So I think our kids do have friends, they do have their hobbies, they do have their hobbies in the sense that they have their sports. But I think what you mean and what I'm also experiencing is when I look back at my childhood, which was obviously in a prehistoric area of the internet and social media. I think a lot of us had hobbies in the sense that
interests.
You were like, I was big about technology. So I was like, when I was a kid, I was disassemble everything that blinks, is connected to a socket, and that is interesting to disassemble and reassemble. And I was absolutely fascinating with, building circuits and whatnot, and total techie before techie was a thing, right?
That's an interest that developed when you were a teenager, and it's
as a kid, like even before that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so that's still today I could consider myself a techie and a technical person, but that's all rooting in
in those early years.
Those early
really.
years, exactly.
Yeah.
Or for a while I was fascinated with airbrushing, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like how the technique of airbrushing and was playing around that. Yeah, it was for a while. And it feels like these days, and it's not only talking about our kids, that a lot of kids they don't have these kind of hobbies where they really deep dive into a certain industry, technology, a certain topic.
Yeah.
It could be, everything from, or chemistry was a big thing.
Yeah.
I was I love doing little experiments and buying all these little experimental boxes that you could buy back then, which probably today would be super illegal because the stuff in there you could build bombs and whatnot, right? So, and it feels like kids of the generation of our children, they often miss these hobbies. So yes, they might have the sports, but it doesn't feel like, and it's the same if I look at the kids of our friends and they don't seem to get involved as much into these deeper topics.
And you know what I think? I think the problem is that they're never bored.
Yes. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I just remember when I was a child, it was like if I went to my mom and said I was bored, she'd give me a chore, right? Yeah. Like, don't come and tell me you're bored. I don't care that we have no plans and it's a long weekend, and I'm certainly not going to entertain you. And go find something to do. With no phones, no screens. You found something to do. You found something that interested you, and sometimes it sparked something that became a lifelong interest. Like, for example, your love for techie things and.
No, absolutely, yeah. And I want to rephrase what you said. They're never bored because they have their phones, but they're instantly bored if they're off their phones, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's the problem, because it feels like take away the phone from the kids. And they just don't know what to do with themselves.
Exactly.
They don't know what to do with themselves. They have no ideas what to do. Rainy Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, you can't go out, you can't do anything fun. They're bored to death. They don't know what to do. And what they then go back to is using their phone.
Exactly. And the thing is that, I once... When my kids were very little, I remember somebody once saying, an iPad is not a babysitter. And I thought, have you ever put a child in front of an iPad? It's the best babysitter.
iPhone is the perfect babysitter.
It's an amazing babysitter.
If you want to get stuff done for like 2 hours.
Oh, totally.
If you want to have some time alone with your partner.
In front of an iPad.
Give them an iPad. Yeah. Open YouTube, Netflix, and for teenagers.
You will have a quiet... No, listen, even for young kids. So that's the reality, is that I think we as parents have actually created part of the problem.
Of course, 100%.
You see it with young kids, toddlers. You're walking around the shopping centre and there are kids in trolleys or kids in strollers with an iPhone or an iPad in their lap, quiet as a mouse, perfectly happy while their mother shops or, does whatever has to be done, or parents sitting in a restaurant. The kids are quiet. The adults can have a conversation. The kids are not interrupting and not whining and not climbing under the table or climbing on the table or etc. So the reality is that these screens are fantastic babysitters.
Yeah.
And so, the kids are not interested in the crayons and the paper to color in at the restaurant.
Because it's so much more interesting.
Because it's so much more interesting to have a phone.
Yeah.
And so I think we as adults are also guilty of handing the kids these things.
Yeah,
and
because it's an easy way out of having to take care of them, right?
Absolutely.
But then it feels like this, to a certain extent, that's then our fault. We have, probably by doing that, what we've taken away from the kids is giving them or forcing them into developing interests and developing their own thing. Because I think kids need to be bored to come up with ideas and to get creative, right? And that's a constant battle I had with my ex-wife.
Yeah.
where it was like, well, you need to keep the kids busy, right? You were with them over the weekend. You need to entertain them.
Entertained.
You need to entertain them for the weekend, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, actually, the kids need to learn what to do with their friend when their friends are not around, when the weather shits, when they have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
They should learn what to do with themselves, right? And of course, the easy way out is handing them their darn phone.
Mm-hmm.
But then you take away that opportunity to just develop that interest in certain topics. And I think that's a problem this whole generation has, and it's the problem that is also our responsibility.
Exactly. And so we've played into that, I think, in a way. And, and for the short-term reward of having kids entertained, right? And so we've taken away that element of boredom. We just supply them with a screen because they stop whining, they stop complaining, they're quiet, they're happy. And so I think when kids are not bored, I think boredom leads to creativity.
No, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. And you look at how children should play. It's imaginary games, or it's make-believe, or it's building a fort, or it's taking something apart or building something, or, that's where creativity is born, and problem solving, and I think that the problem solving and the creativity go together. So, like, what if we deprived our children of by not letting them get bored?
Yeah. And also by not giving them the freedom, right? Because if I think back to when I was the age that my younger kids are now, I used to live in Germany, in Munich, and where my parents lived, just a few hundred, maybe a few hundred meters or a few kilometers out, was this huge, empty, at that time still active military training area. It's now I think it's a nature conservatory or something like that. But it was still kind of semi-active at the time. It's not that they were shooting, so you could go there and have a walk. But it went like for miles and miles and miles and miles.
Yeah.
And we would just, we would take our bikes and just disappear for hours. And we knew that when it's getting dark, then we need to be back, right, in the summer by whatever, 10 p.m. And there was no phones. No one knew where we were. And we just ride out there with our bikes and then, find, collect old shells from ammunition from when we were exercising, and then cleaning them up, and who can collect more stuff. Luckily, we were not stupid enough to just play with the ones that were not.
That was still alive.
They were still alive. We did find them from time to time, and there were some out of usage tanks on that. We would just kind of
boy heaven.
Climb around like total boy heaven. And there was this training area where they would, with the SUVs and the tanks, they would kind of go up and down these little hills, and it was super steep and whatever. So we'd go there and ride down with the bikes and kind of drop down, and sometimes just fall, and just like horribly injure ourselves and whatnot. But it was fun, right? It was like it was freedom, and it was exploring also what your boundaries are and how far. And it just from time to time you would get hurt, right? Sucks to be you, right? If you fall, I remember once I was riding down this little hill and it was muddy, and I got stuck with my front wheel and face planted over my bike into the mud and came back like I don't know if I broke my nose. I think I broke my rib a little bit.
Oh my goodness! Got some onion.
Yes, please. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want to do it like that? Oh, you want to do it like that?
Yeah, and so it was fun times.
But also, I think there's a certain resilience there that you learn.
Yeah, of course.
You injure yourself. There's no mom to oh, my poor darling. Are you okay? Let's take you to the doctor.
It's like no.
Your friends are laughing at you probably.
Of course.
Thinking it was hysterical.
Look at you. The finger's going a little bit to the side. How funny is that? Right? Yeah. And then you were in the middle of nowhere, and then you had to go with your whatever crunch
broken
drips.
Ride your
Just
bike back.
Ride your bike back. It's like woohoo. It's like man up and whatever.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was also creativity, right? You know, then when we were younger back then, you know, we were playing these military games and you know, building groups and you know, play like hide and seek, and we would need to find each other in like an open space of like God knows how many square kilometers, and then building little forts and hiding in the bushes and stuff like that. And it was fun. Like it was like we would just spend like
hours doing that.
Hours, like we couldn't. And of course, we like to play video games and watch TV. But it was so much more interesting to be with your friends out in the middle of nowhere and do some crazy stuff and
having adventures, right?
Having adventures, exactly right. And yeah, that I feel is something that just has been taken away from kids these days, right?
So I mean, I think part of it is screens, and then the other reality is that we. Listen, I mean, I think in Switzerland we're so fortunate because I think our kids have got a lot of freedom. You know, the fact that they walk to school and still have so much independence. They can use public transport. I mean, I think that that's a very rare thing. I think in most parts of the world, children are not doing that. You know, children are either in the care of their parents constantly or the care of school and teachers. But there's constant adult supervision. And you know, that's just... Sometimes I wonder if that's just our own paranoia about our children's safety, because, I mean, I can't help thinking, like, bad stuff has to happen in Switzerland too, right? You can't pretend that nothing ever happens here. But at the same time, it's like the Swiss have decided that children need independence and children need to be able to walk to school and children need to be able to catch the buses and the trains, etc. on their own. So
no, it's encouraged to do so, right? That's what I really like about Switzerland. It's like if I look at other countries, even, you know, I heard from people in the US that if your child just runs around unassisted, you can get into trouble as parents because, like, you know, why is no one watching this 12-year-old kids walking through the gated community? Oh my God, right? Imagine all the things that can happen.
What neglectful parents are you that you...
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so in Switzerland, it's kind of the opposite, where even the schools will tell you, no, we do not want you to play parent taxi and pick up your kids and drop your kids.
And my best is, no, it's a danger to the other kids that are walking to school, because the more cars there are on the road, the more the risk to the kids. Yeah. And so we don't want kids being dropped off at school, because then it means that, you know, there's more cars around the school, there's more traffic, there's more chance of a child being hit by a car, etc. You know, and it's just such a... But I feel like it's a choice that the Swiss have made.
Is there a spider on that football?
It is a spider. Can you get rid of it?
You can get rid of it.
Thank you. So yes, I feel like it's a choice that the Swiss have made, that we are going to act as if our children are safe and secure. And I do feel like people kind of will look out for kids. I mean, if kids are walking to school from the age of 4, you know, and that's just what's the norm here. You know, but you also know which kids walk to school, and you kind of keep an eye out for them, and you know, there's a sense of the whole community also kind of looking out for kids, I think. Well, that's what I like to think.
No, it's true.
No. And there's also trust in the police, right? So you trust that if something ever had to happen, the police are going to take it seriously. It's not like in South Africa where children go missing all the time and nothing happens, you know. And
no, that's true.
You know, it's a very, very different kind of society. But okay, so back to the point. Like, I think children have so little freedom in other parts of the world. And I mean, I think the reality is also you've got parents working full time, like having, you know, both parents having to work full time.
But in a way that makes it even worse, because
makes it even worse, yeah.
the phone, the iPads,
Yeah.
the tablet,
Yeah.
not to name any specific brands.
Yeah.
That's what keeps kids busy, right?
Exactly.
Without having to
Not bothering their parents, right?
No.
So mum can carry on working and she's got Zoom calls all afternoon, and you very happily, as a teenager, you gaming, or you sitting, or not even a teenager, right? As a 8-year-old, you're sitting on an iPad or watching TV or playing computer games, because screens are amazing babysitters. But so then there's no adventure, there's no independence, there's, and then there's, as a result, there's no boredom, there's no creativity, there's no resilience. And so I just feel like we are conducting this massive experiment on the youth of today. And what does this look like? What does this look like when this generation enter the workforce? I mean, they're already entering the workforce, right? But
but we also know what kind of problems this generation is facing in the workforce, because they just you hear so much from employers that they say, we're not hiring those kids.
Yeah.
They're impossible to work with, right? They
the Snowflake generation.
they demand everything.
Yeah.
They think you're entitled to everything. They can't work. They can't be stressed. And you can't talk directly to them. It's all one big drama, right? And of course, then companies will say, why should we hire those people, right?
And then you've got AI. That can do so many of these entry-level jobs, right? If you think about like somebody who's like entry-level marketing, and I mean, why would you hire somebody who's entry-level of that generation for a marketing position when actually AI can do so much of what an entry-level person would do?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's on top of everything.
Oh.
But coming back to the whole topic of social media and phones, one thing we're both struggling with, I believe, is what do you actually do? What do you actually do against that, right? Because what I also understand is that the phone, the smartphone, the tablet has become a way to communicate with their friends, has also become a way to read, to learn about things. So I'm not saying if my kids are sitting in front of the phone all day long, they're just doing stupid stuff. They do a lot of stupid stuff, but they also watch documentaries on YouTube or on Netflix. They also do their homework. So it's become so hard to say, okay, no, you can't be on your phone. Because if I remember back 35, whatever, plus years, I was on the phone with my friends all the time, right? It's like back in the days we had
a landline.
We had a landline, and the big thing were pages.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you would call a number, and then you would leave a number code, and then the little pager would beep, and then you'd call back your friend. It was amazing, like the technology of the future.
Modern technology, yeah.
It was absolutely insane. But I was on the phone quite a bit with my friends and talking to them. So sometimes for hours a day, to the point where my parents got a second landline.
Because the landline was always blocked
for me. And then when online stuff started, even before the internet, where you would dial in with your old modems. That would block the main line, right? My dad needed a main line because it was a doctor needed to be available. So he got a second line. I was lucky. But I was on the phone like all the time. So it's, in a way...
It's relatable.
It's easy to say, well, you should be just more stricter with giving them screen time, and just need to be strict about half an hour a day. But it's they need their WhatsApp to communicate with their friends, to coordinate things, to...
And they don't even use WhatsApp, right? I mean, like my kids, it's not WhatsApp. They're like, Mom, nobody uses WhatsApp. It's like everything's on Snap, right? So, and you're 100% right. And I also think it's normal and natural when you're a teenager to not be as focused on your parents, and to differentiate and to, become your own person, and to individuate, is the word I'm looking for. So that's completely normal. That's how it should be. Your life should start revolving more around your friends and, your peers and all that kind of thing. So I 100% get that. And I think, you know, I think that there's a couple of aspects to it. So I think the one aspect is that they never ever get a break from that either. And I just think that, like, I mean, like, I'm lucky with my girls, like, they're both socially very well integrated, and they
have lots of friends.
They've got lots of friends and all that kind of thing. So there's lots of social engagement. There's lots of, like, interaction, and it's all positive.
And also, if they meet, and that's with all of our kids, if they meet their friends, they're not just sitting there next to each other and are on the phone. Because what I'm seeing a lot with kids of my friends, even if they socialize, socializing means they're sitting on the couch next to each other.
Yeah. All on their
and
own.
all doing that. There's no talking, there's no interaction, there's no whatever. So I think in that sense, our kids are... They're at
least engaging. They're at least engaging. Talking, they're chatting, they're laughing, they're having fun. And, you know, and so they will use social media or Snap or whatever as a means to make plans and to get together. And that's fine, right? So that I don't have an issue with. But, so back to my point, I think for some kids, like you know, you think about it, like, if you were in a social situation as a teenager 30 years ago and you were being bullied at school, or there were dynamics at school that were unkind towards you.
At least when school is over.
At least when school's over, the
bullying is over. The bullying stops.
Exactly.
If you're back at home, you're safe, right?
Yeah. Or you've got some kind of safe space. You've got some kind of way of not having to engage with that or not be exposed to that. And I think the problem is that nowadays, like, they just never, ever, ever get a break from that. It's constantly 24/7, like, in their hand, in their mind. Like, they just never, ever get a break. They never get any kind of emotional space from it. So I think that's an issue, especially when there's bullying and negative stuff going on.
And in a way, bullying has also become easier.
Yeah.
Because back in the days, if I wanted to bully someone or if someone wanted to bully me, you
be in the same space as them.
Same space.
Yeah.
And talk to that person like one-to-one with a risk at whatever, if you're a boy.
Other people seeing you and
other people seeing you. You're just like, if you're unlucky, then you get a fist in your face and that's the end of the bullying, right? And these days it's so easy to hide behind your keypads or your keyboard or your screen and be incredibly mean to other kids and be incredibly destructive without facing any consequences, right? Because you're in the safety of your own space. It's infinitely scalable almost, right? If you have something embarrassing about another person. Now, back in the days, you can say, well, that whatever, I saw him, her naked and doing this and that, whatever. Well, okay, you can tell 5 people, you can tell 10 people a day, maybe tell a few of the friends, but that's it, right? But now with social media, where everyone is connected, where everyone is in these social networks and circles, it's so easy to share stuff. It's horrible, right? And
I think we tell us my train of thought. And I think that also then there's the other element is this, like, social acceptance, right? It's like, you know, then they're posting something on TikTok and it's like, how many likes did I get? How many shares did I get? I don't even know. I mean, and that's another form of, like, social pressure, you know, where, and they judge their own worth based on that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge issue. Like, I really feel for this generation that they base their self-worth on the amount of likes that you get, or on the amount of comments that you get, and etc. And then at the same time, like,
the approval of people that you never met, won't meet in person in many cases.
Yeah. Or sometimes it is like your friends and your peers and etc. But I think it's interesting because I think that the pressure goes both ways. It's like, oh, but my friend posted a video. I have to like it. I have to make a comment.
Oh, yeah.
Like, don't take away my phone right now because my friend just posted a TikTok and she tagged me or maybe, like, I have to give her that affirmation that she needs and wants.
Yes. What will they say if I don't reply?
Exactly.
Right?
Oh my God, all the time, right? Like, I've left her unopened. It's like, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck? Who cares? But like, that's a big deal, right? So it's this constant social pressure, even when it's not bullying or not negative. It's this constant need to give others affirmation, to give, to you judging yourself based on those standards. I mean, it's just so messed up. And I mean, like, I really try, like, with screen time and all that kind of thing, to like manage my kids' screen time. And we have endless fights about it. And I just say to them, listen, these algorithms are designed to keep you scrolling. Like, I cannot expect you as a 14-year-old or as a 16-year-old to actually control this. Like, you do not have the ability to beat the algorithm. You just don't.
Your brain is not developed enough to process that.
Listen, even as an adult, I don't think our brains are processed enough to, or advanced enough to beat these algorithms.
And it's interesting, I think in one, what was the country? Was it Canada or Denmark? Some country recently banned the use of social media for kids under the age of 16. Altogether.
Denmark, actually.
Denmark, yeah.
But I'm not
Denmark, Sweden, I don't know.
But this is the thing. I think that probably in 5 years' time, a lot of these social media platforms will be banned for kids under 16. And in the meantime...
And they should be.
They should be. And in the meantime, our kids, right, this generation, there's been this massive social experiment on them. And what have we left them with?
Yeah.
And I just think it's so wrong, that it's like actually criminal that these... social media platforms can use these algorithms and can really just hijack people's minds.
You're 100%. Yeah.
Oh, it really, really bothers me. And I have endless fights with my kids because then they like, first of all, they want to insist that they can control their scrolling. And I'm like, the reality is you can't. You actually cannot. Like, you're just not able to do it. So I have to some extent, control some of your screen time. And even with trying to control it, it feels like it's out of control.
Yeah. And what drives me absolutely mad is, on the one hand, kids their age don't seem to be able to concentrate and focus anymore.
Oh, no.
If you give them any task, they lose interest after 2 minutes. But then, when they're sitting in front of their phone, sometimes they have to like talk to them, like address them like 2 or 3 times, like hello, hello, I'm talking to you. Like, what?
Yeah.
Because they're so
engrossed
and engaged in those little 10-second clips.
Oh. I mean,
it's absurd.
Like kids nowadays, when they don't know how to watch a movie.
Oh yeah, movies are like, oh Jesus.
3 minutes into the movie, they're like, oh, this is boring. Isn't it? It's boring. I mean, like, what have we done? And I don't know. I just think it's so crazy that. It was so interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was about ADHD. And this guy was saying that he was talking a lot about these algorithms that have really been designed to keep us scrolling, and they. The developers and these social media platform developers, I mean, they brag about this, right? The irony is that so many of these tech geniuses that created these algorithms, their kids are not the ones using phones.
They don't let their kids use phones.
They don't let their kids use phones because they know the power of it, right? Or tablets. Okay. So anyway, the other thing is that he said that there's a lot of confusion nowadays where people say, oh, it's just all this like endless scrolling, which is creating more ADHD. And he said that's actually a complete misconception. You can't give yourself ADHD from all this constant scrolling and sort of short clip videos and etc. You can't give yourself ADHD,
so it needs
but it mimics a lot of what ADHD looks like, the sort of absolute lack of concentration. Yeah.
So you're watching this podcast, Mr. Terry?
Oh yeah. So he was saying that you can't catch ADHD from this kind of behavior, right? But it mimics a lot of what ADHD looks like this, like an inability to concentrate, an inability to focus, can make you quite agitated and quite, and just talked about these algorithms and how they're designed to keep you hooked, because they take you through this emotional roller coaster, of and I can't remember exactly what the emotional roller coaster looks like, but they basically take you from curiosity to anger to happiness to
and there's like a certain sequence of in the algorithm where it's you have something which is shocking, and then you have something which is funny and cute and little kittens and puppy, and then there's something curious, mysterious, and there's this whole.
They've worked it out, right?
They worked it out exactly, yeah.
Just exactly how to keep you engaged and to keep you scrolling. And I mean, that's now becoming a recognized form of addiction. So besides gambling, gaming, alcoholism, sex addiction, drug addiction, etc., this screen addiction is now becoming recognized as an actual diagnosable addiction. And it just says so much, right? And I think so many people are addicted to screens, not just teenagers.
Yeah, 100%. And what I find particularly challenging is, obviously you and I were on our phones all day long, also for business reasons, right? So I essentially live online because of what I do and just how I'm using. I'm not outside and doing construction, working in the fields, or doing plumbing, or being in the operating room and doing surgery. What I do is on screens, and what I do is, or what we do is very international and is very there's never a stop to it, right? It's 24 hours all the time. So yes, I check my phone all the time. I check my mails all the time because I need to, right? Because there is something which system could fail, or it could be something else. And so I find it very, very hard to tell my kids, no, you shouldn't be on the phone all the time, when I'm on the phone all the time, right? But it's then also so hard to explain, well, I'm working and not just doing other shit, but
not just on Snapchat all day. Yeah.
But try to explain it.
Yeah.
Trying to explain it in a reasonable way to a kid, right?
It's very difficult, right? And I think that kids mimic what we as adults do, right?
Of course.
I've become quite aware of I'm actually not on social media. I don't maybe look at Instagram for 2 minutes a day.
I don't
even know how TikTok works. I spend a bit of time on LinkedIn, but I think LinkedIn is in a different category. But I mean, nowadays, a lot of the time my phone's on silent. I think I've become quite bad with my phone, and I've stopped posting anything. I haven't posted anything, okay, besides this, but I mean...
That's different. That's different. It doesn't count. It is different.
But I don't post anything about my private life on any social media platforms, and I haven't for 3 years. I mean, I just stopped.
Except private conversations we're having.
Except the private conversations we're having.
That's a different story. No, but I think it is a different story. It's not. I think you and I are not going out and.
And actually, ironically, I stopped posting on social media because my girls became so particular. You can't post that photo of me because I look like whatever, And so I stopped posting anything out of respect for them, actually.
Great.
And I mean, I just suddenly felt like actually it's nobody's business. It's kind of ironic that we've been posting these private conversations with. But
I think that there's a difference. Maybe let us know if there is a difference or not. If you're watching this. But I think there's a difference between having the unstoppable urge to document any yogurt that you eat and post it to the world and brag about your amazing holidays on social media to get likes.
Yeah, like posting the sort of highlights reel of your life, right? Yeah.
Exactly right. It's like a selected, curated version of your life, which doesn't reflect reality.
I mean, I used to sometimes look back at my whatever Facebook or so I'm giving away my age, but like sometimes I go, oh my god, that was such an amazing year. I'd forgotten about half those holidays or whatever. When you look at your own highlights reel, right? It's like, oh my god, we did some cool stuff. Which your day-to-day life doesn't look like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also quite absurd if there has been a whole industry developing around influencers that literally rent out mock-up private jet interiors.
Are you kidding me?
Where you can go do a photo shoot.
Pretend you're in a private jet.
Pretend you're in a private jet, which is literally like a little corner of a room, which airplane seats and nicely done, and they have the expensive bottles of champagne, whatever, and you just can sit there and pretend you're jetting to the Maldives for your next holidays in a private jet. You pay them $2,000 for a couple of hours of shooting some photos.
You're kidding?
And there's a whole industry around that. And the other thing is that, which seems to be a common thing, is a lot of influencers travel to whatever location.
Yeah.
And then they have 10 different sets of clothes.
Okay.
So they're there for one day.
Yeah.
But then they change 10 times and take pictures.
Make it look like they were there for 10 days.
Make it look like they were there for 2 weeks.
But they can actually only afford to be there for one day. Right. So they're flying economy class, pretending that they flew in a private jet.
Yeah.
Changing outfits, changing which tree they stand in front of or which hotel they stand in front of.
That's ridiculous.
There was even I saw something on when I was having my nails done the other day, and there was some real life German police reality show.
Uh-huh.
And the cops were called to somebody's house because the neighbor said, no, she's away. She's gone to Bali. Mm-hmm. She's an influencer. She's gone to Bali. Uh-huh. And there's some strange man in her house. Mm-hmm. So the cops were called. Anyway, and then the cops sort of went and had a look around. And this guy said, no, he's the boyfriend.
Okay.
And so they sort of said, okay, well, can you get her to call us to tell us that you're allowed to be here? Anyway, and then the next day, for some reason, the cops went back. And they went in and they found her. The boyfriend was taking photos of her, pretending to be on a beach set in Bali. And they'd put up palm trees in the living room. And she was in her bikini. And he was telling her to laugh and whatnot. This whole thing. And she had told the neighbor that she was in Bali. And so she didn't want to let on that she was not in Bali. And so the cops were there, and the cops were now investigating this thing. And really, this woman was just pretending to be in Bali. But she said, no, she didn't have enough money to get to Bali, but she had to post stuff on Instagram.
Of course.
Because otherwise she was going to lose her following. And I was just like, huh? But that ties in completely with what you're saying, right?
We're kind
also so good.
We're kind of sidetracking the whole conversation here, but it's so interesting also how what's the right word? Not substantial these followings are oftentimes. I remember reading about one case where there was an Instagram influencer who had something like 1 or 2 million followers on Instagram. Okay. Amazing. She must be making
so much money.
Boatloads of money, right? And she got on the news because she was having a nervous breakdown again on Instagram and crying because she was about to get a sponsorship with a clothing company.
Okay.
And the clothing company said, okay, let's do a sponsorship, no problem. We just need you to sell 40 t-shirts. Go ahead and promote this to your followers. Sell 40 t-shirts. She couldn't sell 40 t-shirts to 1 million followers.
Maybe they were shitty t-shirts.
Right? No, it was it's if you have 1 million or 2 million followers,
you should be able to sell 40 t-shirts.
Jesus, it
can't be that hard, right?
Yeah, it can't. She couldn't do it. She sold 12 t-shirts. Then she was crying in front of the camera how everyone is like, hey, how could you be so mean to me? And this is about my...
You don't really love me. You don't want to buy my t-shirts.
I'm like
not really loyal, right?
Yeah, because like no one gives a fuck about it. Like, yes, they're following her and yes, they're liking her, but there's no substance in it. There's no...
They're not going to spend any money.
And they're not going to spending any money. And I'm quite curious what's going to happen about the whole influencer scene over the next couple of years, because everyone is an influencer now, right? And everyone...
I don't know any influencers.
I do. Well,
do you?
Yeah. I know several influencers, whatever it is.
Yeah.
In various different industries. But if you're showing a bit of skin on Instagram, it's relatively easy to amass a following. And then think that that's going to be it. But there's, like, everyone is doing it now.
It's becoming so saturated,
It's become so saturated, and I think at some point, and probably it's starting even now, if you're in that lower tier or mid tier, companies will start to look at the actual conversion numbers. It's like, yes, amazing. You can get whatever 100,000 likes per post. But does it convert into
sales?
Any sales? Does it convert into any...
Does it change the bottom line, right?
Proper reactions from people? Do they act on it? Do they visit your website? Do they follow the brand? Do they promote the brand? And I think it's going to be interesting to see, with this, we're literally everyone being a follower these days. How that's going to change the whole industry.
And also, you think about it, like, young people nowadays have less expendable income.
Yeah.
And you look at, like, big markets like China or the US or, which...
I mean, China's probably on the way up in terms of numbers because they're...
Numbers of...
The people, just numbers of people, and also...
Yeah, but they're bad. They also, because the economy's in a bit of a downturn, the Chinese, what they typically do is they tend to save money when things are tough. Like, that's very typically, like, part of Chinese culture, that they're very good actually about saving, right? They don't go into debt, they don't take out credit cards and things like that. So the Chinese, they've got a big problem because people are spending less. And people are, the influencers who are talking about saving and how to recycle things or upcycle things or how to save money, those are the ones that are actually getting more and more following. And and so there's going to be less and less of the, you might follow somebody on Instagram, but are you going to spend your money there? And I think in big markets like China, the answer is no. For a lot of people that don't have the money, they're not going to spend their money, right, on those sort of meaningless purchases, right? The lipstick or the t-shirt or the handbag or the supplement or the whatever,
And I remember several years ago, I was, I can't name any names, but I was working with a big retail company, and we were introducing their product line to the Chinese markets, and we worked with influencers. At the time, the first influencer, there was the early days, with, like, when Alibaba just started to become big, and there was Taobao and the other platforms, which are now quite big. And so we were distributing the products on one of these platforms, and then we collaborated with a local marketing agency in China, in Shanghai, and they said we need to work with influencers. Everything is around influencer marketing, right? And so we hired this influencer, which had, I forgot how many followers. Paid her a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
Like, ridiculous how much she charged for traveling to Switzerland, doing a little tour through the premises of the company and some other marketing and promotional activities, and then promoting certain products. And so, yes, we sold some stuff, but absolutely was not worth it. Was so not worth it because, like, there was no Let's get a few sales because they're promoting some stuff. Good for her. And she made a shit ton of money.
She made a lot of money, yeah.
But in terms of brand recognition, brand building, I didn't see that to work for us at least.
So interesting, yeah.
No, it's quite interesting.
So also the interesting thing, I mean, I saw some Instagram posts the other day, and actually my ex shared it with me, and so the post, I think it was a Danish teacher, and the way that she managed to change teenagers' attitude to screen time and to all of the social media stuff was she started showing them these documentaries about the impact of social media and just how much social media is relying on these algorithms and essentially manipulating you. And I don't know how true it is, but it was quite... I sort of thought maybe that's something to try, right, with my teenagers. It's like, just educate them. Like, besides me just saying it, right? Because I feel like I'm always saying it, that the algorithms are hijacking their brains. But if they see it on a Netflix documentary or something, and they sort of see, okay, it's not just mom, like, this is something that's a worldwide phenomenon. And you know, when kids start to understand how they're being manipulated and how their brains are being hijacked, and also that kids start realizing that they can choose, right? I think when kids start realizing that they need to be the ones to choose whether they are, you know, purely consumers of the stuff, or are they using it in a useful way? Are they using it to learn something? Are they using it to advance themselves? Are they using it to grow their mind? Or are they just purely consuming?
And that's the interesting thing to me, because on the flip side, we also live in a day and age where essentially there's now unlimited free access to all the knowledge that you ever wanted, right? You can get onto YouTube. I think Harvard publishes all their classes online for free.
Wow.
Obviously, there's things like ChatGPT that can regurgitate anything that was ever written.
Yeah.
And so you can educate yourself to a level that
was very high level.
Never in the history of mankind possible.
Yeah.
But you have to choose to do so, right? Exactly. And a lot of people choose not to. And that's what I find so interesting, because you can get any kind of education for free now. I remember reading a story, and I don't know if it was more of a joke or a whatever TV series thing, or if it was actually real, about a guy who started with a company, and he got in. He said it was Harvard educated, right? And so they hired him, and he was doing a brilliant job. And then at some point, HR said, "Well, can you send us your certificates?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any."
Okay.
Like, so what do you mean? You said you're Harvard educated. Well, yes, I am. Want to show me certificates? Well, I'm Harvard educated. Like, I took all the classes online. I went through all the materials. I can tell you everything, but I never went to Harvard. Why would I pay $80,000 or $120,000 a year for something I can get for free on YouTube?
Oh my word, interesting.
Right? So ask me anything.
Yeah.
I know everything, but I don't have a certificate.
Isn't that so?
And it's true, right? So what?
Interesting.
And it's also the interesting topic. What's the value of these big organizations and big names, where, especially in the US, which I found completely absurd, where you go into student loan debts of hundreds of thousands for an education where you can say, well, you could get it completely for free, right? I mean, I've seen people going 200,000-300,000 in debts for a chiropractor education, like for whatever. It's like, well, yes, there's a certain part that needs some practical stuff at least.
Yeah, I think
But-
at least
but-
with a chiropractic degree, I mean, there would be a lot of practical.
There would be a lot
application,
of practical
etc.
stuff.
And
But
you can't go and become a physiotherapist or a chiropractor from doing it online, right? I mean, that isn't possible.
But a lot of the question is how much of that is actual hands-on stuff,
yeah,
and how much of that is just sitting in classes that you could get online, right? So wouldn't it be smarter to say, okay, I say
a marketing degree or a commerce degree or a
no, let's say even in the field, instead of paying 300,000 for a degree, as a chiropractor, spend 30,000 and working one-on-one with someone really hands-on on a personal level to teach you all the stuff, and then save yourself the other 270,000 for education you can get yourself, right? So like, doesn't make any sense, right? Because
I think a chiropractor is a bad example, but yes,
okay, maybe, yeah.
but you're so right. Yeah.
I mean, maybe chiropractor is a bad example, but there's lots of
plenty of degrees that are purely academic,
which are purely academic.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not even talk about social sciences.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Whole different story.
Commerce degrees.
But commerce degrees.
Yeah.
If I look back even to my education, I went to a very good university in Europe, which at the time was consistently being in top 1-2 university in Europe in business education. The stuff I learned from a practical perspective.
And then you couldn't get credits even though you were running your own business and
don't think
the subject of entrepreneurship or something.
Yeah, I couldn't get credits for. So I was running my own business while studying, and I actually had employees at the time. And I was taking a course in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And you needed to get some practical credits in some fields, so by doing some apprenticeship or whatever, an internship. And so me and a friend he was running a larger business than I had, so he had around 40 employees at the time. So we went to the professor and said, look, so here's what we do, here's the businesses that we run, here's how many employees we have, how can we get credit for that? And they said, no, that doesn't count. Like,
that's so ridiculous.
No, if you have your own thing, it doesn't count. You need to work for someone else. Like, what do you mean it doesn't count? Like, we're in an entrepreneurship class, this guy has 40 employees, I don't know, I forgot how many I had at the time, like, not many, like 3 or 4. The guy. How does this not count?
Sense.
No, it doesn't count. And I think both of us just dropped out of the class and said, "Look, this is not worth."
Clearly, you're not going to learn
It
anything.
would be printed on because it's just bureaucracy and stupidity and just not. It doesn't have anything to do with reality.
Yeah.
And in so many of these courses, you can get the education for free online. So,
I mean, like Masterclass, for example. I mean, like
amazing.
Masterclass. I mean, okay, that's a paid subscription, but still, I mean, you look at the value that you
Masterclass is a paid subscription for. I mean, you pay. I think if you pay full price, you pay like $200 a year.
Yeah.
Even less. I think 150 maybe a year.
Yeah.
It's like $20 a month.
But didn't you say about the number of people that actually then complete? What's the statistics around that?
Oh, no, wait. So that's a different story. So Masterclass is not to make any product placement here. Not sponsored by Masterclass, not affiliated by Masterclass, but Masterclass.com is. They've been around for many years. It's like an online education site where you can watch masterclasses by experts in the field.
And amazing experts.
And it's everything from cooking, negotiation skills, relationships, teaching, music, arts,
writing,
whatever. Like
psychology.
They have a class for everything, and it's typically classes between, let's say, the shorter ones are an hour and a half. The longer ones can be over several hours, 6 to 8 hours. And they now have like a catalog of probably hundreds of the best professionals in their fields from across the globe. And you can get unlimited access to that for something like 10 or $15 a month.
Incredible, yeah.
And I have to say, like, just talk about one example, negotiation skills. So I have in the past attended a negotiation skills seminar, which was 3 in-person days from a quote-unquote negotiation skills teacher worth several thousand Swiss francs. And I went out of those 3 days and I have to say, I learned more in 1 hour watching
Chris Voss,
which is a former FBI hostage negotiator.
He's brilliant.
Watching that masterclass of his, which was like 1.5, 2 hours. I learned so much more than for
from
a
3
fraction
days
of the money. Like I would just say, even if I paid the 200 year of a yearly membership for that 2 hours, I would have gotten more out of it than from those 3 days. Right. And then, but I have access to like hundreds of classes, right? I watch these things all the time when I'm in the car. And it's insane. Like for the price of like 2 Starbucks coffees a month, you can get almost like unlimited fantastic education. And that's what I found so interesting. So how is that going to change the landscape of all these overpriced universities,
prestigious
and
universities?
So the one thing that I get, that I have to admit, is if you're in one of those universities, there is something about the reputation, right? So if you have the piece of paper that says you attended this university, yes, okay, that gives you some advantages when you're applying. There is something to be said about the network that you get. Because I
think a huge amount of it is actually the network.
Because a lot of these universities have their alumni networks that you can attend. You can always, if you're looking for someone in another country, you can reach out. And then, at least in the past, but I'm not sure if that's true anymore, looking back to my university years, you learn how to get shit done, right? If you're under pressure constantly for the, if you're doing a bachelor's degree, it's 4 years. If you're doing a master's degree, it's 6 years. If you're doing a doctorate, it's some more years. You learn how to deliver a good quality product, good quality outcome on time, under tremendous pressure, while doing 30 different things at the same time. And that's something you wouldn't learn from an online training, right? But then, I have to say, that's the one point that's I think that's becoming less and less relevant because, some universities don't give any grades anymore because it would be
discriminatory.
Exactly. Literally. Like, no, you can't say that you are better than the other one. Like, everyone gets the first prize, almost like that. Which is, I think, ridiculous, right? Which is exactly not what you want from a place like that. And of course, these days you can't even just have discussions anymore because you need your safe space. You cannot offend anyone with your opinion. You cannot hurt anyone's feelings with their opinions. So,
but so back to like kids and teenagers and screen time, right? I think what's so important is that you want to encourage them to consume the kind of thing that grows their mind rather than the meaningless shit. And, and the more you consume the meaningful stuff, the more the algorithm is going to feed you that. So, there is the potential to grow an interest or to grow a passion or to learn something or there is that potential, right?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a true story or if it's just something made up, but I heard an interesting theory that the algorithms of these platforms, like for example TikTok, are one of the biggest attacks on the Western world out of China. Because that's what the story says, and again, I haven't verified that. Apparently, the algorithm in Europe and in the US, it just feeds you more crap, like eating Tide Pods and this and that challenge and all this stupid stuff, which is highly engaging but absolutely stupid. Whereas on TikTok in China, the algorithm pushes who plays the best piano, who recites the best poem, who does the best, creates the best piece of craftsmanship.
So they're creating competition.
And they're creating a situation where in China, people learn how to do things, build things, educate themselves. Whereas in the US and Europe, you're just dumping a whole generation down.
Of the Western mind.
Yeah. And I find it an interesting theory. I don't know if it's true or not. But, and I need to talk to some people in China actually.
Yeah, you do.
To verify that. But it's an interesting theory.
It's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, so sorry, to get back to your point, the question really is how do you get your kids to do that? Because also, it's not that easy. So yes, you can have limitless creative content available. But learning how to do something, how to build something, how to paint something, how to play something, how to learn an instrument, how to do whatever, it's just not as attractive as watching 6-second clips of whatever, someone doing a stupid challenge.
I just can't help wondering, and because I heard something about how there's this resurgence of like slow hobbies.
Slow hobbies, okay.
Yeah, so like I think this woman was knitting, and so she's like one of the biggest Instagram influencers around knitting.
Okay.
And apparently there's this like resurgence of slow hobbies where people take the time to learn a skill and to slow down, and it's just, it's something that you've been doing with your hands, and you really appreciate then the sweater that you've knitted or the scarf that you've knitted or whatever. And I just thought, I really hope that really does take off. And are the youth of today at some point going to become sick of it, right? It's a bit like eating junk food all the time. Think about if you go on holiday and you have 3 weeks of traveling and you're just eating kind of unhealthy food, you're drinking too much, you're not exercising, and you come back and you're like, oh my God, please give me some vegetables, and I just want to go for a walk, or I want to go for a run, or I want to do a workout, I want to feel healthy again, right? Give me some sunshine and some healthy food.
Yeah.
I just want to reconnect with the stuff that actually makes me feel good. And like, I really hope that at some point people get sick of it and just realize that it's just constantly chasing that next dopamine hit, and it's not actually satisfying. It's not deeply satisfying at all, because it isn't. And maybe at some point people are going to reject it and start tuning into things that are more meaningful. Like, I really hope that that's the case. I just don't know. I don't know if our brains have got the power to do that.
Yeah. It's the other question is really what will science tell us about what's happening with this generation of
screwed up MRI scans of their brains. Right? I kind of sometimes feel like I'm the only parent who seems to like try to help my kids to manage their screen time. And also, I'm very lucky that my girl's dad, like, he's more strict about screen time than I am. And I think it's really difficult when your partner or the other parent has a completely different attitude to screen time, which is your case, right? So I think that's just unbelievably challenging when you've got somebody who doesn't back you on
the issue of screen time.
On the issue of screen time. Like, I just think then you've lost the battle. Then you basically, there's no ways that you can ever even begin to have an influence or control it or whatever.
Yeah, and in particular, if you're almost like another person almost actively works against your
your
interests.
Yeah.
Like, don't be so mean about that. Don't be this and that. So like, well, there's a reason why I'm trying to avoid this, but
Yeah.
and that's the problem, right? So
That's a huge problem. Really challenging.
So how do we wrap this up? Is there hope for this generation, or have we screwed up, or?
I think time will tell. I honestly don't know. I think, like you say, they've got access to all the information, all the knowledge in the world. And I think if they decide to start, maybe it'll be like almost like a rebellion, right? You think about, like, for example, communist governments, right, that try to control people's minds or try to control what they thought or what they said or whatever. At some point, like Animal Farm, right? Like at some point, maybe they kind of go, hang on, like this thing is just stealing my time, stealing my mind. Maybe there'll be some kind of rebellion or uprising against it. I don't know.
Well, let's hope.
Let's hope. But I mean, in the meantime, like, I just think as a parent, like, for me, I just feel like I've got a responsibility to help them manage it and to educate them about it and to have the endless fights about it.
And I think, as you said, like, a lot of it is probably helping them understand what damage this actually does to them. And maybe just pointing them to the way that there's other interesting things out there.
Yeah. And maybe the thing to do is to, I think one also has to engage with them to some extent on these social media platforms. I mean, I know we both try to do that, right? But like, send them interesting stuff on Instagram that they're interested in, for example. And, try and influence the algorithms a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we also need to do. And then I also think, I think we have a social responsibility to our kids to also just manage their screen time, whether it's screen time limits or, making sure they hand their phones in at a certain time of night so that they're getting a decent night's sleep. And I mean, it's like, it involves a bit of a fight, right?
Yeah, but
oh, that looks so good. Do you want me to cover that with foil or anything?
No, just let's leave it like that.
Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. So I think it's as you can see, it's an interesting and endless discussion that can lead into all sorts of other topics.
Oh. So I don't know that there's any easy solution to this, but I think that it's something that's important to think about. I mean, it's important to talk to our teens about, and to be aware of, and to just approach this intentionally. I think.
Once we have time will tell. I think no one knows the solution.
I don't think there's an easy solution.
It's not obvious what to do, at least not to us. So if you have any other ideas, let us know in the comments what you do with your kids, how you manage their screen time, social media use, and all that. And let's see.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please subscribe. Leave a comment. It will help the algorithm. And let us know what we should talk about next. That algorithm. Damn it.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.